Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to explore some seriously wild places? Today, we're going to the edges of the map, the kind of places that make you go, wait, that's actually on Earth.
Buckle up. We're talking extreme locations, from crazy high peaks to islands so remote they're practically in another dimension.
We've got some awesome Wikipedia entries and a BBC travel article that'll blow your mind.
We're not just listing cool facts, though. We'll uncover what these extremes tell us about our planet, how life survives in those crazy conditions, and maybe even learn a bit about ourselves along the way.
So let's kick things off where it's literally the top and bottom of the world, the poles. Lots of folks debate which one claims the most extreme latitude, but get this, it's a tie.
Seriously, yep.
Kapaklippen Island, way up north of Greenland, and a spot on Antarctica's Gold Coast both sit at 83 degrees 40 minutes latitude. Who knew?
It's a good reminder that our planet isn't perfectly symmetrical, right? The continents, they're all kind of jumbled up, and that definitely affects how far they reach towards those poles, hence the tie.
All right, so from the poles, let's stretch our imaginations and our travel budgets and think about the longest straight lines you could travel, both on land and sea. Ready for some mind-blowing distances?
You see with it.
Okay, the longest overland route is a whopping 13,588 kilometers, stretching from Liberia all the way to China, even crossing the Suez Canal. Can you imagine?
Whoa, hold on. Straight line. We're talking about Earth, a giant sphere. How does that work?
Right. They're not straight in the way we picture them on a flat map. These lines are called geodesics. They represent the shortest distance between 2 points on a curved surface, like, Earth.
So it's like drawing a line on a globe. It looks curved when you flatten it out on a map, but it's the most direct route on our spherical Earth.
Exactly. Now get ready for this. The longest straight line journey over water absolutely crushes that land route. We're talking a 32,090-kilometer voyage from Pakistan across 3 oceans to Kamchatka, Russia. Just picturing the sheer variety of ecosystems you'd encounter is wild.
It's mind-boggling. There was this 2018 study that used some crazy detailed map data to confirm this route. Technology is pretty amazing. It lets us constantly refine our understanding of Earth's geography.
So cool. Now from those long, long lines, let's shift gears and think about towering heights. We're talking about elevation extremes. Everett, right. That's got to be the highest point on Earth, standing tall at 8,848.86 meters above sea level.
That's where things get a little tricky. Remember how we talked about Earth not being a perfect sphere? Well, because Earth bulges at the equator, a mountain near the equator can actually be farther from Earth's center, even if its peak isn't as high above sea level.
You mean like if you measure from the very core of the Earth?
Exactly. Imagine spinning a ball of dough. It flattens a bit at the poles and puffs out at the equator. So the mountain in that equatorial bulge, like Chimborazo in Ecuador, can actually be farther from the Earth's core, even if it's shorter than Everest when measured from sea level.
Mind blown. So Chimborazo takes the prize for being farthest from Earth's center. And speaking of Ecuador, there's another peak there called Cayambe that's the fastest point on Earth.
The fastest. How's that possible?
Because of its location near the equator and its distance from the Earth's rotational axis, it's basically zooming around as Earth spins.
It's amazing, right? Earth's rotation and shape create these unexpected records. Makes you really appreciate all the dynamic forces that shape our world.
Absolutely. But our extreme elevation tour doesn't end there. We've got the highest volcano, Ojos del Salado, right on the Argentina-Chile border. Then there's the highest navigable lake, Lake Titicaca, high up in the Andes. And for all the glacier fans out there, there's the Khumbu Glacier on Mount Everest, the highest one of them all.
These features are incredible examples of nature's power. They were shaped by volcanic activity, glacial movements, and tectonic shifts, creating some seriously awe-inspiring landscapes.
Now, humans have gotten in on the action too, building roads, railways, and even settlements at staggering altitudes. Imagine driving along Umulingla in Ladakh, India, the highest road at a dizzying 5,800 meters, or taking a train over the Tangala Pass in China at 5,072 meters.
It's pretty amazing, right? Human ingenuity at its finest. Our drive to push the boundaries of what's possible is incredible. But you gotta wonder about the long-term impacts of living in such extreme conditions and how resilient humans can really be.
That's a great point. Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's dive into a different kind of extreme remoteness. We're talking about poles of inaccessibility, those points on land farthest from oceans, and vice versa.
Okay, now this sounds interesting.
Right, and get this, the Eurasian Pole of Inaccessibility, or EPIA, is actually up for debate.
Wait, how can a geographical point be up for debate?
The commonly accepted location is somewhere in the desolate Ellison Desert in China, about 2,645 kilometers from any coastline. But new research suggests that where the Gulf of Aab meets the Arctic Ocean should be considered, potentially shifting the EPIA closer to the sea.
So basically, what counts as the nearest coastline is open to interpretation, which leads to these fascinating scientific debates.
Exactly. And what's even cooler is that these recalculations actually suggest two possible EPIA locations. And get this, both of those, along with the Pacific Pole of Inaccessibility, that's the point in the ocean farthest from any land, are almost equally remote.
Wow. So these points of ultimate isolation, both on land and in the vast Pacific, are connected by their shared remoteness. It really makes you wonder, what would it be like to stand at one of these points knowing you're as far from human civilization as possible?
Right. It makes you think about how vast our planet is and all the different experiences it holds. But hey, let's not forget about the continental poles of inaccessibility.
Right. Those exist too.
Yep. Africa sits near where the Central African Republic, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo all meet. Australia's lies near Papunya in the Northern Territory, North America's. That one's between Kyle and Allen, South Dakota. And South America's claims its spot near Aeronapolis, Mato Grosso, Brazil.
These locations are fascinating because unique ecosystems have evolved in those isolated spots, and human communities have adapted to all the challenges of living in those surroundings. Even in our interconnected world, there are still places on Earth relatively untouched by humans.
Totally. And speaking of isolation, we can't forget those islands that stand alone in the vast ocean. Now, defining the most remote island isn't as simple as you might think.
I can imagine what are we basing it on. Distance from any other land. Population. How easy it is to get there. All those things change how we view these islands and the people who live on them.
For example, if we're talking about uninhabited islands, Bouvet Island in the South Atlantic wins, hands down. It's over 1,600 kilometers from any other land. But when we consider inhabited islands, things get interesting.
Now we have to factor in the human element. Does a small population on a remote island change how isolated we consider it to be? And how about all the unique challenges those communities face and how they've adapted?
Exactly. Should we count Tristan da Cunha with its population of around 300 as part of an archipelago that includes the sparsely populated Go Island? If so, it's a top contender for most remote. But if not, then Easter Island, famous for those mysterious Moai statues and located over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited island, enters the picture.
It shows that remoteness is subjective. It's not just about physical distance. It's about how isolated a place feels, how cut off from the rest of the world.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that feeling of isolation can exist even in cities, believe it or not. Auckland, New Zealand is considered the most remote city with over 1 million people. It's over 2,100 kilometers from the nearest city of comparable size, Sydney, Australia.
See, remoteness isn't just about physical distance, but also about how isolated a place is within its own context.
All right, ready to crank up the heat. Literally, let's talk temperature extremes. Delal, Ethiopia, takes the gold for the hottest inhabited place on Earth. The average annual temperature there is a scorching 34.4 degrees Celsius.
Over 93 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. Makes you wonder how people manage to live in that kind of heat. What strategies have they developed to not just survive, but actually thrive in such a challenging environment?
Such good questions. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's Orniakan, Russia, the coldest inhabited place. The average January temperature there is Medic of 46.4 degrees Celsius. That's colder than a freezer.
It's incredible, isn't it? These temperature extremes really highlight the range of conditions found on Earth. From the scorching Ethiopian desert to a Siberian winter, life finds a way. It speaks to the resilience and adaptability of both humans and nature.
Absolutely. And it's not just air temperature that can be extreme. Ground temperatures can get even more intense, like Death Valley, California, where the ground temperature can reach a mind-blowing 93.9 degrees Celsius.
You wouldn't want to walk barefoot there. These ground temperatures really show the power of the sun and its impact on Earth's surface. Makes you think about the delicate balance that allows life to exist within these narrow temperature ranges.
And while we're talking about extremes beneath our feet, let's not forget about the deepest ice. The Denman subglacial trench in Antarctica goes an incredible 3,500 meters below sea level.
That's deep. Those massive ice sheets are crucial for regulating global climate and sea levels. As our planet warms and those glaciers melt, the consequences are felt all over the world, which really highlights how interconnected our global systems are.
So we've gone from the poles to the equator, from scorching deserts to icy plains, and we've even touched on the human presence in some of these extreme environments. But there's this one place that really captures both extreme remoteness and the resilience of the human spirit. Itokortormit, Greenland.
Now this is where a deep dive gets personal. We're going from those abstract geographical extremes to exploring how people actually live in one of the most challenging environments on Earth.
Exactly. Our BBC travel article takes us on a photographic journey to this remote community, 800 kilometers from the nearest town, and frozen in for 9 months of the year. It's home to just 370 people who are facing a shrinking population and the looming threat of climate change.
Itokortomidit is a powerful example of human adaptation, but it also shows how vulnerable those remote communities are in the face of global challenges.
The article does an amazing job painting a picture of life in this extraordinary place. We'll hear about photographer Kevin Hall and his experiences dog sledding across the ice, encountering musk oxen, and the ever-present possibility of spotting polar bears. It's a landscape that demands respect and a deep understanding of its rhythms.
It's incredible, right? The contrast between the vastness and power of the Arctic landscape and the resilience of that small community that calls it home makes you think about our relationship with nature and how important it is to find a balance between human needs and environmental preservation.
Those photos of the dog sleds were amazing. The way they navigate that icy terrain, it's like they have an internal GPS for the Arctic.
It's a partnership, you know? Well, it's been honed over generations.
Yeah.
The dogs rely on human guidance, and the people depend on those dogs' strength and instincts to survive in that unforgiving environment.
It's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of these extreme places, but the article does a great job reminding us that Itokortormit isn't just some dot on a map. It's a community with a rich history and a unique way of life. But they're facing some real challenges, like a shrinking population.
Yeah, the article mentions that young people are leaving to find opportunities elsewhere. It's something that happens in a lot of remote communities, and it raises questions about whether these settlements can really last in the long run.
And then there's climate change, which is a huge factor. We talked about H. Danielson, the hunter and guide. His livelihood depends on the sea ice, which he needs to hunt seals, polar bears, and narwhals. But as temperatures rise, the ice is forming later and melting earlier, and that disrupts the entire ecosystem.
It's a stark reminder that climate change isn't just some abstract concept. It's having a real, immediate impact on people's lives, especially in these remote communities that are often the most vulnerable to its effects.
The article also talks about the limited resources and high cost of living in Itokortormit. Just getting basic supplies to such a remote location is a logistical nightmare, and the prices for everyday items can be astronomical.
It highlights the economic challenges these communities face. Access to things like education, healthcare, and economic opportunities can be severely limited by the remoteness, and climate change just adds another layer of complexity to these issues.
But despite all those challenges, there's this incredible resilience and a deep connection to the land that really shines through in the article. Danielson's hope that his son will follow in his footsteps as a hunter says a lot about their cultural heritage and the sense of identity that's tied to these traditional practices.
It reminds us that culture and identity are closely intertwined with the environment, especially in places where human survival has depended on the natural world for centuries.
There's this one photo in the article that really struck me. It's Danielson holding a muskox skull, and you can see the pride in his face. It's not just a hunting trophy, it's a symbol of his heritage, his connection to the land, and the sustenance it provides.
That image speaks to the deep respect for nature that's ingrained in these cultures. They understand the delicate balance of taking only what they need and honoring the animals that provide for them.
The article makes it clear that hunting in Itokortormit isn't about profit. Hunters can't sell the meat or skins. They use them to feed and clothe their families. It's about sustenance, tradition, and maintaining a way of life that's been passed down through generations.
It challenges our modern perspectives on consumption and resource management. In a world that's often driven by profit and materialism, it's refreshing to see communities that prioritize sustainability and respect for the environment.
The article also talks about how the relationship between humans and polar bears in the region is changing. As the bears are forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of food because of the shrinking ice, the risk of encounters and potential conflict increases.
It's a perfect example of how climate change can disrupt ecosystems and lead to unintended consequences. It's a reminder that we're all connected, and the choices we make in one part of the world can have ripple effects impacting communities and ecosystems far away.
It's ironic, isn't it? Tormet, one of the most remote communities on Earth, is on the front lines of a global crisis.
Exactly. Climate change is a global phenomenon, but its impacts are often felt most acutely in these marginalized communities that have contributed the least to the problem.
And the article doesn't shy away from the visual splendor of Tormet either. It describes the magical light, the towering icebergs, and the aurora borealis, the northern lights dancing across the night sky.
It's easy to forget, amidst the discussions of challenges and change, that these places possess a breathtaking beauty, a raw power that can inspire awe and wonder.
And there's this local belief that the northern lights, they call them Arsarnarit in the Inuit language, are the souls of children playing with a walrus skull.
It's a beautiful example of how indigenous cultures weave stories and beliefs into the fabric of their environment. It's a reminder that there are multiple ways of understanding the world around us, and these traditional perspectives often hold valuable insights into our relationship with nature.
The article concludes by highlighting the high cost of living in Ituqortoomit and that stark reality of the community's reliance on hunting, symbolized by those polar bear skins hanging outside many homes.
It's a powerful image that really encapsulates the complexities of life in this extreme environment, the beauty, the challenges, the traditions, and the uncertainties of the future.
So we've really zoomed in on Ituqortoormiit, a community that embodies the extremes of remoteness, resilience, and the impact of climate change. But their story is just one example among many.
There are countless other communities around the world facing similar challenges, often in even more precarious circumstances. These extreme locations are like a microcosm of the global issues we face.
It's amazing, isn't it? All these extreme locations scattered across the globe, they can teach us so much about our planet and ourselves.
It all comes down to perspective. When we explore the edges, the boundaries of what's possible, we gain a deeper understanding of the whole.
Looking back at everything we've talked about, it's clear that these extreme environments are like living laboratories. They offer a glimpse into the incredible adaptability of life, both human and otherwise.
Think about Desolate, Ethiopia, one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth. People have not only survived there, but thrived for generations, adapting to that extreme heat.
And then there's Oymyakon, Russia, with temperatures that plummet to unimaginable lows. It's hard to believe, but people live there, go about their daily lives, finding ways to stay warm and carry on.
It challenges our ideas of what's considered habitable, right? And it showcases the resilience of the human spirit, but it also highlights how crucial cultural knowledge and traditional practices are in adapting to those extreme conditions.
It really underscores the diversity of human experiences and our ability to adapt to such a wide range of environments.
So that adaptability is being tested now more than ever. Climate change is altering these extreme environments at an alarming rate, and that poses significant challenges for both the communities and ecosystems that depend on them.
Ituqortoormiit is a perfect example. The shrinking sea ice has a direct impact on the Inuit hunters' way of life, forcing them to adjust their practices and find new ways to sustain their community.
It makes you realize that climate change isn't some far-off threat, it's happening right now, and the consequences are real. And those consequences are often most pronounced in the places we've been exploring, the high mountains, the polar regions, the remote islands. These areas are especially vulnerable to even small shifts in temperature and weather patterns.
So what can we do? It can feel overwhelming to think about these global challenges, especially from our comfortable positions.
Awareness is key. Understanding how interconnected our world is, how changes in one place can impact communities and ecosystems far away, that's a crucial first step.
The story of Ituqortoormiit really drives that point home. The melting ice in Greenland isn't just some abstract concern. It has a direct impact on the lives of the people and animals who rely on that ice for survival.
And those impacts can ripple outwards, affecting sea levels, weather patterns, and ultimately the lives of people all over the globe.
When we recognize those connections, it can empower us to take action, whether it's making more informed choices in our daily lives, supporting policies that address climate change, or advocating for the protection of these vulnerable communities and ecosystems.
It's about acknowledging that we're all part of a larger system, and our actions, both individually and collectively, can shape the future of our planet.
The BBC article also touched on the ethics of tourism in these remote locations. Itokortormit is starting to see more and more adventurous travelers who are drawn to its extreme remoteness and unique beauty.
That raises some important questions about responsible tourism. How can we make sure that our desire to experience these incredible places doesn't have a negative impact on the communities and ecosystems that make them so special?
It comes down to being mindful travelers. We need to respect local cultures, minimize our environmental impact, and contribute to the economic well-being of the communities we visit.
And maybe some places are best left undisturbed, preserved in their pristine state.
As we wrap up our deep dive into extreme locations on Earth, let's hold on to that sense of wonder, that deeper understanding of our planet's incredible diversity. And let's renew our commitment to protecting those most vulnerable corners of our world.
Let these extreme places remind us of our planet's resilience, our own capacity for adaptation, and the urgency of addressing the challenges of climate change.
And for all you armchair explorers out there, keep those travel maps handy. The world is full of extraordinary places waiting to be discovered responsibly, of course. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.